Okay, that's going. Stand by to record.
And we are live.
All right, you guys ready?
Yeah.
It's a gritty drama about the seedy underbelly of the 1970s roller derby circuit that was nominated for 2 Golden Globes: Best Supporting Actress and Best Performance of a Scarecrow Fright Wig propped atop an obvious stunt woman's head. We watched Kansas City Bomber, which means it's time for another episode of Portland at the Movies.
In a world, in the year, in a time, in a city, every day in New York City, on the Miami Police Force, in the Deep South.
Ain't no pig! Ain't no pig! Ain't no pig! I don't love you no more!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Portland at the Movies. I am one of your hosts, Todd Workhoven, and with me, as always, is the Mark of the Mark and Toddcast. How are you?
I'm really well.
Good. And also joining us is Portland's best celebrity, the Brian Kidd, the Unipiper. How are you, Brian?
2 years in a row.
2 years in a row.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing extremely well. Just for the past, several hours, we have just soaked ourselves in this movie.
We are living the Kansas City Bomber dream. We just stopped by the Kenton Club in North Portland, and we had a drink there at the bar that they used in this very movie, and they had posters on the wall of this movie from different countries. We realized when we had a closer look, but we were, yes, as you said, we were just soaking in the authenticity that this movie
We're
has.
really bringing the tourism dollars to we're doing the
To the-
Kansas City Bomber circuit.
To the Kenton neighborhood.
To the Kenton
Yeah.
neighborhood, which we were discussing when we were having dinner there. I wasn't really familiar with where Kenton was. I'm not very good with the names of different areas. I'm more familiar with the landmarks of them. And after I got there, I was like, oh, this is where the Dancing Bear is. So if anyone knows the northeast Portland area that the Dancing Bear is in, that is the Kenton area. So that's where we just came from, because that played quite a role in this movie called Kansas City Bomber, which is a 1972 movie starring Raquel Welch that was filmed almost entirely here in Portland. So, Brian, why don't you tell us what this movie is about?
Thanks, Todd. Kansas City.
So natural.
Well, Kansas City Bomber is a biopic.
Biopic. I've never known how to say that.
That's a biopic.
Biopic.
About the American domestic terrorist Timothy McVeigh and the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City on April 19th, 1995.
Yes.
Kansas City Bomber. Wait,
Kansas City Bomber.
Did I watch the wrong movie?
That was the wrong movie. Although, as we found out, the director of the Kansas City Bomber, which is the movie that we did watch, made a biopic in the the mid '90s about O.J. Simpson. So that's close-ish, I guess.
I guess that was that 1995 OJ pick was such a hit that he removed his name from that movie, and it was directed by Alan Smithy.
Alan Smithy, good old Alan Smithy. So yeah, but this movie, he kept his name. He stands by this movie, which I had never heard of. There's a couple people that are like, oh yeah, I think I've heard of that. Actually, we have a friend, Heidi, who was like, that's why there's those posters at the Kenton Club, because that's where they filmed this. So this is kind of a new thing for me, and it is my first, I think, entrance into the Raquel Welch filmography. So that was kind of interesting too.
I don't think it gets much better than this, from what I understand.
I don't think so, and this was not very good. So, but very pretty to look at. She was. I was talking about it earlier. How the 70 Farrah Fawcett's aesthetic never really did anything for me. It just all the 70s is just so gross. Like everything about everything in the 70s is just filthy. But she looked.
There was so much hair in the 70s.
I know, it's all just feathered and unkempt, but her hair looked quite good, and she looked quite good in this movie. So she was. This was supposed to be a big break for her. She was coming off being like the hottest pinup model in the world for being in a movie called 1 Million BC, and she was the poster girl for that, and was like the pre-Farrah Fawcett Farrah Fawcett in that terms as far as posters and stuff.
This was supposed to be her breakout role for serious acting,
Yeah.
and not just a sex bombshell. She was even well, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but maybe we want to give people an overview of what actually is going on here, so that as we talk about things, people can have a frame of reference. So Raquel Welch stars as Casey Carr, who is an up-and-coming roller derby star in Kansas City.
Do you think she was called Casey because she was from Kansas City, or was that just a
I was wondering that
lazy
too.
writing?
Of course. No, of course she was.
I didn't really put that together until just now.
Really?
Well, because I couldn't understand a word anyone said in this movie because the sound was so terrible, so I never really knew what they were calling her.
Obviously it is
That's true.
because don't they call her Diane? Is that her real name?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like a stripper name, I guess.
Yes, Raquel. Well,
Anyway, she is the roller derby star in Kansas City, where she is in the middle of a match, and she gets into a fight with one of her own teammates, Big Bertha, and the two of them decide that Kansas City is not big enough for the both of them.
How do they come to that conclusion? I think by shouting "Kansas City isn't big enough for the both of us" at each other.
Yes.
And how many times, it's just undescribable how weird, they bring out the rule book and
Oh yes.
That was my favorite part where they
It
whipped
says
out
right
the
there.
rule. Well, you made an oral agreement on the rule book,
It
page
says here
57,
yeah.
subclass 1.
Yeah. Rule 85 says that you can do this.
They were trash talking each other like the pre-WWE match, and that constituted a verbal agreement, and then the loser of their little race had to leave Kansas City forever. There's nothing anyone can do because it was in the rule book.
So if you were forced to leave Kansas City, what do? You move to Portland.
You do.
We're getting all of those. Go home, all of you Kansas City transplants. No vacancy in Portland. Casey Raquel loses the match, and she is forced to leave Kansas City. So I guess she gets traded. She comes to Portland, and she has to start her life over. She has to make friends. She has to make new relationships. And she gets involved romantically with the owner of the team in Portland. She goes on many exciting adventures with her team in Portland, like going to the Kenton Club and getting drunk.
Yes.
And getting drunk and walking on train tracks. And going on bus rides.
Yes. Lots of bus riding montages.
And going out to dinner and having long walks on Hayden Island. But eventually the jealous team owner trades away her very best friend. He rigs a match in Portland that she is supposed to lose, so that the team owner and Raquel Welch can move away and start a new team in Chicago. But Raquel is quick to his what he is up to, and she decides to not throw the match and win, and so she gets to stay in Portland. And we assume that the evil team owner has to go to Chicago.
Is that what happened in this movie? I didn't really catch some of that, but I guess you're right.
It all happens very quick.
It does. Both nothing and everything seems to happen in this movie.
So what I said was more plot than the movie actually gives.
Okay.
And that happens over an hour and 40 minutes, what I just said.
Right.
Interspersed with action shots of lots of roller derby. It's kind of an exploitation flick. There's
everything I read about it noted its gritty quality, which I think back then was a code word for like it wasn't done
quality
well. I think, and that was kind of, but I mean, it could have been because this is 1972, so I think that was kind of just part
was
of the
gritty back then.
Yeah.
I think it was dressing up the seedy underbelly and presenting it in a package that you could take grandma to the theater and experience this facet of American life at the time.
Right. Mark, can we turn our mics down a little bit? Or at least Brian's a little bit.
Mic check.
Mic check.
So,
am I in charge of that again?
In just your ear or
no, on the thing?
On the thing, yeah. So
I'm peeking.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Is Brian? Oh, you're
keep
wearing
talking.
Brian's wearing this fantastic shirt that I got him
It is awesome.
when I was on vacation in Idaho, and it is
I don't know if it shows up on
a
camera.
a nice little map drawing. There's some topographical things of Idaho, and it says Iowa on it. And I saw these in a store, and I asked the lady, and she said there's so many people that come from the South that think Idaho is Iowa or Iowa is Idaho, or like they have no context of where or what things are. And so they just started making shirts, and it's a great shirt.
You texted me a photo of that shirt, and I was like, I have to have that shirt.
I texted both you and Mark. You guys got to see his shirt. It's hilarious.
I work in geography in my day job, and just, I see people call things the wrong name all the time.
Right.
And I'm going to wear this around, and, I'm sure there are lots of people.
Smoke coming out of people's ears. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. Thank you, Mark.
So let's talk about the people that are in this movie.
Yes. So we mentioned Raquel Welch, and you
Yes.
mentioned the villain, the Bert Henry, who is the owner of... Is he the owner of the Portland team?
The Portland
Yes.
team, the Portland Loggers.
Right. The Portland roller derby team, in case we didn't throw out the roller derby aspect.
Roller
This is
derby.
a roller derby film.
So in the 1970s, there was, I guess that was the first roller derby craze, because there was no roller derby before it just was born into an existence in the 70s.
I think it was from what I read in the articles about this is that it was popular in the 50s and 60s as well.
Huh.
And I feel like based on what is playing right now and based on the crowd there and we'll get into this later, believe me, the crowd reaction shots in this movie, which are mind blowing.
Well,
but
They're amazing.
I have a feeling those were all real reactions from real. So I think it had the same kind of backyard small appeal as professional or not professional wrestling, but wrestling.
like
What would you call
WWE.
it? Yeah, that type of wrestling, but on the smaller scale, how like different smaller communities have those, and then they
Oh yeah,
go
local
into
amateur.
the local. Yeah. So I think they were I had a feeling they were in the same circuits as those things because the crowd seemed the same. All of the fighting, whatever that
Yeah, there
was
was
happening.
A lot of theatrics on the breaking a chair over their face. Let's line up as a wall, and we're gonna lay down on the ground, and like it just
Right.
seemed like very theatrical.
Right. So the owner of that team you mentioned was Bert Henry, and he is played by who? What was his name?
Kevin McCarthy.
And he looked super familiar to me for
Me
a
too.
couple reasons, but I want to see where he was familiar to you.
So he just has that face, and I was like, gosh, what have I seen him in? And I had to look it up, and I had to read his page a couple times to figure it out.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's like a lot of movies I've seen him in. I think his face is just so particular that you see him in one thing and you never forget that face. And I think ultimately what I remembered him most from was the Twilight Zone movie from 1986.
He was the dad he was. I know exactly the scene where the boy who has the superpowers.
Yes.
And so he was the father.
Yes.
In that.
Oh, I never
in
saw that.
And
Oh,
the
my goodness.
giant rabbit, the freaky
Yep.
rabbit. Yeah.
Yep.
That's what I knew him from.
So I think in my mind, he is the face of every like upper crust snooty 80s movie villain, like who owns the ski resort or whatever. And
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't quite figure out why that was, but he is the antagonist in UHF.
Yep.
He is Weird Al's foil or whatever as the station owner or whatever. And that's why I have that in my mind of him being this stuff. But there's something else that you said he was in before we started recording that I recognized him from. But now I
Oh.
can't remember what you said.
Inner Space?
Maybe.
Fantastic
Yeah.
Voyage?
No, you said
something?
Inner Space, so maybe that's what I'm thinking. But anyway, he has a face, and if you Google him, you'll totally recognize him.
He has a face, but he does not have a Facebook because he's dead.
Oh.
Wah, wah.
But he lived to be 96, so
Yeah, he was super old. But I wrote down he looks like tobacco smoking feels. Like he just has that weird, not bristly hair, but like everything about him just feels mahogany somehow. I don't know how to describe it.
Smells like a pipe.
Totally.
he's always wearing a smoky jacket.
Yes, he is a smoking
Smoky
jacket.
I don't know if there's okay, so let's talk about some of the other characters in the movie. There's Big Bertha,
Yes, the dump truck of a woman who sorry,
putting it mildly.
right? Who, is one of the
She is Raquel's first rival, the one that she makes a bet with in Kansas City,
Uh-huh.
and the description that Raquel uses against her is just brutal.
What does she say?
She calls her a fat tub of lard who
Tina, you fat tub of lard.
she's like your skating is even worse than how you look. And
I did was that when they were yelling, they were having the smack talk back and forth at the beginning.
Yeah.
I could tell that Raquel Welch was trying so hard because I think all of the other roller derby people were like real roller derby like skaters, like the woman who plays Jackie. I think I felt like she did all her own stunts and all that stuff. But I had read that a couple other people were real roller, and I felt like Big Bertha was one of those people, and she was used to trash talking, but like Raquel Welch, you could just tell that she was struggling, but grabbing the mic and trying to be this and that. Remember,
it was overacting for sure.
Totally.
I did look up. Big Bertha was a real roller derby athlete, and her name in real roller derby circuits was Moo Moo.
What? Oh,
but yeah, I think the Jackie was too, which is interesting because what I said at the top about the Golden Globe, there actually there was a Golden Globe nominee for Best Supporting Actress for the lady who plays Jackie,
right? Who's her rival when she moves to Portland,
right.
So this is a good time to. Can someone help explain to me how roller derby works? Because I was so confused watching this movie.
I wrote down several times, how do points work?
How do points work?
Because at one time they like would get 4 at a time, and then like you'd look up and it's like 85 to 97, and there's no baskets or there's no. So I think this is kind of a hybrid of real roller derby and something made up
and
for
the
this
movie.
Because I think in real roller derby you have to, and actually I know somebody who's in roller derby. I should have asked her. So Christine, if you're out there, I'm sorry for not asking you. I think you have to pass people, and every time you pass a person. You get a point or something like that. And that's why you'll see them sometimes 2 or 3 people grab hands and do like the whip thing to whip someone super fast, and they'll knock someone out of the way. But this movie does not make it clear. And I'm going to play some audio here because I feel like half of this movie is these poor announcers trying to give us enough information about what we're watching, because there are a lot of roller derby matches in this movie.
Yeah, it's filler. It's like 40% of this movie is just match.
Yeah,
filler.
and it all looks the same. Like you never feel like you're watching something different. But the audio during that all falls on these 2 poor announcers. So here's a little clip of what most of the movie feels like.
Setting a whip out on the jam is number 11, Casey Carr, the bomber herself. And Casey draws at his opponent, number 42, and that's Sally Vega.
I want to get to
There are 10 girls on the track for the first jam of the evening. See, they get 60 seconds in which to score points, and everybody who wears a helmet is a jammer. The method of scoring is the jammers lap the pack, and for each opponent they pass, they pick up 1 point. Adios, Sally Vega.
So
for people who were new to roller derby, that was
all you get.
Yeah.
And this is like while action is happening and you're trying to follow but my question for this movie was, so the way that they show roller derby, they're doing the roller derby, but there's a lot of like fights that look like professional wrestling. So in other words, like they're doing little hits, but overreacting or slamming their heads against the turnbuckle. I guess they didn't have a turnbuckle, but the ropes are.
And getting props and
getting, yeah. I mean, Mark said like they grab a table and like a chair and like a toolbox and a mop at some point, a massage table that's there in the middle of the room.
It's like at any point you could just choose to pick a fight.
And yeah, and the crowd throws food at one point.
Yeah.
But my question is, in the context of this movie, is the roller derby a scripted thing?
Right. I couldn't figure that out. It seemed like maybe there was overarching plot points that were to happen, but then what happened in the match maybe was
not
real.
Talked about. Yeah, kind of improvised.
Mark's shaking his head.
I think that there were probably 4 things that had to happen, in order to progress the plot.
It's like it's like a waiting for Guffman script where there's like the 4 plot points, and you can do whatever you want in between as long as you mention those 4 things along the way.
Exactly. And so like at the beginning, Big Bertha and her had to have a skirmish in order to lead to the the conflict that they had at the interview on the stage. And
So do you think in the context of the movie, the beef with Bertha was supposed to happen? And do you think
Well-
that she was being traded to Portland and that's just how they were playing it off, that she was going to Portland?
Or did they get in a fight and then have to scramble to like find a place for Casey to go to?
Yeah.
Because there's a couple times like after the match they'll like talk to each other like, oh, sorry for, you know, going down so hard, you know, no hard feelings, or like that sort of thing, like they didn't know. But then the fights were so choreographed and fake feeling, like it would be as if the WWE people were backstage like acting like it was real. You know what I mean? Like it was that level of stage fighting. And like you don't improvise like throwing a tool chest at someone. Like that's not something you surprise your fellow actor with.
I mean, it's already confusing enough as it is, but then you put it in the context of a movie of roller derby, and you really have no idea.
Right,
It's very meta.
Yeah. Yeah, so and of course when Casey gets to her new team, then the old star skater is threatened and develops a rivalry with Raquel Welch's character then.
But other characters that stood out. Should we get to the elephant in the room?
Yes.
It's just
I watched this movie for the first time like 2 weeks ago, so I was watching it early and then I'll watch it again. And the first thing I noticed, and I didn't tell you guys, but it came up today independently, all three of us were like, what was happening with the extras in this movie?
It's phenomenal.
Hands down, these are the most entertaining extras I've seen in any movie ever.
Crazy. It's like, and all of these extras, most of this I think was filmed at the Portland Expo Center. That is true?
Okay, so question there: was there actually a roller derby track at the Expo Center?
I think so, but I can't be totally sure. But I think so. I mean,
somebody tell us in the comments below.
Yeah, I don't know if that was that hard, difficult to build, but I mean, I feel like all of the we're watching in this,
and we're broadcasting.
Oh, are we? Okay, yeah. So we're watching. Mark made a little compilation and then made a slow motion crowd reaction shots, and they are reacting to what I'm assuming is a real roller derby match. I mean, what are they?
There's no way that they're not acting. Like they
You
are.
don't think they're watching anything real right now?
No,
they're just being told to do it, or are they?
No.
These are real reactions.
These are real reactions. They are not
yeah.
acting like they're
Because these are not. Yeah, these are not actors.
Those are
These
genuine emotions.
the strangest
Straight from the heart.
collection of people I have ever seen.
We've
in my
given
life.
names to half the people in this 3-minute video.
So all of these people are insane, and there's the screen grab that I told you to grab at the beginning. So right out of the gate in this movie, they sing the entire national anthem, but they show.
I'm showing the two dudes right
all,
now.
Yeah, they show all of the other players, and these two men, and I don't mean to be lookist, but again, to what I was saying about the 1970s aesthetic, two of the least appealing people I have ever seen in my life.
There's Colin Malloy.
Right, yes, on the background thing. But those two players, and then that just set the tone. And every time you see this crowd, it's Goontown. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It is like they had an open.
Those two players.
It is like they had an open casting call on the Max, and just like all of the weird people on public transportation, you're right in here.
Everybody who didn't make it as a background extra for Napoleon Dynamite show up here. It's 30 years ago. Oh man, but yeah, that I was obsessed with those background actors.
They were distracting. Like you,
They really, because they were real in a way you never really see in a movie.
Yeah.
And I can't quite describe if it was because they were reacting to a real thing.
It's kind of like when they use stock footage of a sporting event of a real crowd, you know, in a sports movie, and then you can tell like, oh, that's a different.
They cut to the close up of like the 6 people around them, and they're like quietly clapping or whatever.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, but that's so. It was worth it just for those people. It's crazy.
We will put this full video on YouTube.
Which I'm hoping, we were talking about before, it just becomes a gold mine of reaction gifs, which is just
It
which
really
is
is.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And one of the ladies in the little video clip looks like one of the girls from Haim, if anybody is familiar with that band. Oh man.
So what stood out to you in this movie
It
besides the extras?
besides the extras, which took me a long time to get over, and how great Raquel Welch looked. Um, I guess it was just that, man. I don't even know how to answer that.
There was something that stood out to me right towards the beginning, and it's when she's coming to Portland. Did you get a sense of so she leaves Kansas City and she's driving to Portland,
Yes.
and then immediately they play it out like it's a montage, like you're going to see her journey across the United States, and then immediately they start showing shots of Oregon scenery, and you're like, oh, she's in Oregon already, and then they start flashing interstate signs, Chicago, Denver,
Salt Lake City.
all the while you're seeing Oregon.
That was so because I'm like, okay, well, here's the slow-mo smooth jazz drive, because this whole movie is just music that I can only describe as like lugubrious 70s schmaltz music. And so she's taking this like slow saxophone drive, and it's like clearly it's the gorge, and then she's stopping at a beautiful waterfall in the gorge.
And then, oh, she's on the Markham Bridge.
Yeah, and then on the Markham Bridge, and then all of a sudden, I wrote down, wait, that was supposed to be Kansas? Because she's like now leaving Kansas City. And then she's on the Steel Bridge, and then a bunch of stuff happens. And then she's still on the road trip like 5 minutes later. She still hasn't left her house because she's saying goodbye to her children.
It was comical.
It was crazy.
But I think it would only be comical for someone who lives in Oregon or lives in Portland.
But to front load that with waterfalls and like giant gorge scenery, and then to pretend you're in Kansas. I mean, it's not like it was the
comical.
East Coasters. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. It was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
We're not even in Oregon yet? And then when she finally gets to Portland, she's going over the Markham Bridge, which is the I-5 bridge. And on the top deck, so they must be going south, there's the two huge freeway signs that just had a big black tarp over both of them. And one of them just said Portland. That's all, like no exit information, just two giant black signs. One said Portland, which is pretty great.
Portland movie geography.
Yeah. But yeah, I mentioned it before too. Another thing that stood out for me, I think it was hard for me to follow because the sound was terrible in this. Like it was, there was like locker room.
It was very muddled.
There was like a locker room scene where they like put one mic in the middle of a locker room and like 30 people screaming at the same time.
I also noticed that many of the really exciting skating scenes, just the sound mix was just terrible. They didn't have a big crowd making noise. It was just like
that final scene was like that. There was no music. There was no crowd sound. There's a couple like you can hear skates rattling a little bit. It was that was weird too.
Yeah, is that a thing that was just the mediocre movies of the 70s, or
I feel like a lot of this stuff was very either of the time or trying to be of its time. You know what I mean? Trying to ape the big popular gritty movies of the time.
There's so many things that we have come to expect in movies that are inventions over the last 30 years. Like the gut punch sound and things that we see and we connect with modern movies that doesn't happen in real life. Like when somebody gets punched, it doesn't make that
slapping
over. Exactly that big over the top. That's the one. That's the one. And so this, of course, didn't have any of that.
I actually wrote that down in that final scene. They're like punching each other, and there was no sound effects for any of it, which was I was like, it didn't need to be that obviously fake one, but there was just nothing.
Right.
So it could have been like a stylistic choice, I guess, but whatever it was, it didn't really work.
Can someone tell me how the laws of physics work with helmets in this movie?
They don't.
It's like, did you notice how quickly that the roller derby folks would lose their helmets? They would just like fly off their head, and they'd be wearing them for 2 seconds. I
wonder if that was a necessity because the big thing about this movie was that Raquel Welch did a lot of her own stunts, and she trained for 5 hours a day for 3 months roller skating, building up to this, and she broke her wrist in training, and that's why she's wearing her wrist brace in the movie and all of that. And so she does a lot of skating in this movie, but every time there's like a rumble or a fast-paced scene, there is an obvious stunt woman with just this gigantic pile of hair that is always obscuring her face and flying around, and
it looks like Cousin It on skates.
It really does. And it was such a contrast because, like I noted earlier, that Raquel Welch is very soft and beautiful and like modern to right now looking, as opposed to that 70s look. And that fright wig of a stunt woman was just hilarious.
I think it was a stunt man.
Do you? I kept trying to see, but I
don't think they would have done that.
I don't know. I tried looking though because I wondered the same thing, but I could be convinced, but I don't know. I wasn't. I thought it was a woman, but yeah, that hair was just insane.
I wonder what the Portland roller derby team's name was back in the 70s. Do you think it was the Portland Loggers?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Did
we have a team back then? I guess we.
I assume we did. It
was somewhere.
That'd be weird if this movie came out all about Portland roller derby and then
and there wasn't any Portland roller derby scene.
I did notice a lot too there. Like we mentioned earlier that there was a lot of scenes of the roller derby, like lots of these matches that again was hard to contextualize and figure out the scoring and all of that. And I would say almost half of those, Raquel Welch is sitting on the bench watching people we don't really know in a game that we're not sure of the stakes. And she's sitting there and they keep cutting back to her just sitting watching from the bench. And that was such a weird way to try to engage us as the audience, to have the star not doing the thing that we came to see her do.
True.
And that seemed to happen a lot.
It's much easier to have your star not skate.
Totally.
I read
they couldn't pay the wig woman enough that day, so they had to sit Raquel out.
I think the studio. I read that the studio was concerned that Raquel Welch would not be able to pull this role off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, their concerns were warranted.
But we do get to see Raquel Welch roller skate with Jodie Foster in this movie.
Yes. So I watched this movie before you guys, and I was like, when the credits came up, I was like, Jodie Foster.
It was weird.
And she's in the movie maybe for 10 or 15 seconds. They roller skate down the street. She's 9 at the time, I think, or 10. Jodie Foster is, and she plays Raquel's daughter.
Yeah.
And they skate down the street, and then they have a little scene on the porch, which I felt like all of this movie, that's another thing I noticed. Like that scene was all done in one take, and the camera was always in one place. And I don't know if that was because there's a scene also where they do this like Aaron Sorkin-esque walk and talk through the hotel at Jansen Beach, that big old brown building that burned down. And I forgot where I was going with that. The walk and talk speech. But it was all one take, and all extended. And I don't know if that was another stylized thing where they were showing that they could do this big long, Goodfellas like extended take of whatever, but. Yeah, I found that very strange too. Like they had one chance to get it all, and that was it. Then they had to move to the next setup.
That scene with Jodie Foster roller skating down the sidewalk reminded me of the scene in Extraordinary Measures with Harrison Ford chasing the wheelchair down the street,
wheezing his way down the street, chasing a child. Oh, that's totally true.
Yeah. Jodie Foster as a child, wasn't she famous as a child for something?
Yes, she was. And I looked at her filmography, and this was very early in her career. So she had done some TV stuff and TV movies. After this is when she did like The Parent Trap and there's a couple other, and then Taxi Driver, of course, was a couple years after this because I think she was 12 or 13 when she did that. But this was, I think, her first movie that wasn't a TV movie or like a Disney type thing. So yeah, she was in there and then she was out, but she got billing like up front. She got front credit for that.
I recognized her voice before I recognized her face.
Yeah, she has a very distinct drawl voice.
Drawl with a little lisp action going on.
Yeah, so that was pretty crazy to see. And to see that, especially after we saw what Raquel Welch looks like now, like not realizing how old she is. Because she was like 23 when she made this. And so how much older she is than Jodie Foster.
Yeah. So speaking of her children in this movie, how did that work? So she was a single mother.
Yeah.
And she had 2 children, and they were living with her mother. So like grandma was watching the kids, And was that supposed to be in Portland?
I think it was in a third undefined place because the movie starts in Kansas City. They have the derby off or whatever you want to call their little skate off, and Raquel has to leave Kansas City forever, and that's when the driving montage starts and goes forever, and then ends up or halfway through that driving montage. That's where we get the scene with Raquel and her mom and the two kids, and the little boy runs away in the field because he's, I guess, scared that mom's
gonna get hurt,
and Raquel just chases him all around as they're both sobbing, which was a strange scene. But then there's a little bit more of the driving montage after that.
Yeah.
So I felt she drove from Kansas City to somewhere, I don't know. She visits again on a road trip as they're going.
It was weird because I was thinking that the children were in Portland too. So then when mommy goes and lives with a teammate on a houseboat, I'm like, what a terrible mother. She's just going to live on a houseboat when her kids are down the street living with grandma.
I think it's a third town.
Okay.
Yeah, just unmentioned town because when she gets to Portland, she moves in.
Even though it really looks like a Portland neighborhood.
It's probably absolutely filmed in a Portland neighborhood, and it doesn't make sense when Henry is talking about, hey, we're going to move to Chicago. I need to bring my kids with me. Is what she was talking about.
And then he promises, I'll bring the kids here. They'll be here.
Kids. But she's not living with the kids now. Like, why wasn't that a requirement to go to Portland?
Right. Yeah, totally. So, I think it's a third undefined place because they do revisit it, but she is on one of the bus trips with the team at the time.
Yeah.
So, but that was very unclear because we never see the kids again. They're talked about, and we see them through a window in a distance.
They couldn't afford Jodie Foster that much. There's also a lot of the location. It's what's the term in movies when establishing shots. A lot of the establishing shots are weird as well. When they have one period of time where they are going from city to city playing out on the road, right? And so they show a clip of a game playing, and then they show out the windshield of a car driving at night. They fade to that, and then they fade back to a game.
I noticed that in one shot, the bus is driving in the middle of the day, and as it passes in front of camera, it's like suddenly in the middle of the night. And I didn't know if that was like a mistake or they were trying to show the passage of time.
I think they were trying to show the passage of time through all of that, but it wasn't. Maybe I've just become spoon-fed by modern movies of you now are watching a bus drive at night. That means that they are traveling,
right.
And these were a little more abstract or a little less defined
it could be. And now that we're describing it and I'm thinking back to it, this movie is very much a league of their own in a way. It's the girls team that travels around on the bus. The one has to lead their family, like all of those little, and then the two rivals against each other and the one gets fired. And it had a lot of the same little done, I think, not nearly as well as A League of Their Own would do after it.
But it kind of left out the whole gender element. It didn't.
That's true.
Portray the women as like the underdog. It was it portrayed the women's team and the men's team very evenly.
They did. The only time that ever came up was there's a weird scene where they walk out after practice. Raquel Welch and Pigtails, her friend Pigtails. And they get the two men approach them in the dark parking lot.
Oh yeah,
and try to hassle them or try to like take off with them or whatever.
Them.
And then they
but
fight
even
back.
In that case, they beat them up and
they do. And they
away.
Run away. And we never hear or see or mention that ever again.
That even happened. Yeah, there was no repercussion from that.
But you're right. That's the
only consequence.
Okay, so we have a little situation here. So. Mary Culp. Do either of you know Mary?
No.
Okay, so she's watching on Facebook. She says, I remember it well, was doing a show at the Expo Center, and an ad went, and I sat in on the filming as they needed extras. Also, Raquel Welch stopped by our booth and visited a very nice lady smaller than she looked on screen. She was a very nice lady,
Oh,
much
Smaller
smaller
than
than she looked on screen.
that's funny. In
Wow.
this
Maybe
Life,
she's in one of our clips.
in this Life magazine,
I sure hope so.
What if she's the
Yeah.
she's the older she has to be dead by now. There is an amazing old woman giving what I call the Italian middle finger, which is the motion where you kind of scrape your fingers under your chin at someone, I guess.
Mary, please post a photo of yourself so we can identify you in these crowd scenes.
Maybe, she can look at the video posted after this and she can see if she's in one of them.
That's very cool, though.
Oh, wow.
Mary. So that's Mary.
Oh, Mary looks great.
She looks great. And so
that's
that's
not going
thank
out
you,
over our
Mary.
feed, is it?
That's
if you have more info, Mary, please let us know.
That's
fantastic.
Awesome. I did read a lot about the and there must have been a big call for extras to come, because that seems to be the thing. Like, I remember them looking for people to come be extras in this. This movie.
This movie was apparently a big deal when it came out. So let's talk about this.
Yes.
Right here, I have an issue of Life magazine from 1972, and on the freaking cover is Raquel Welch. I'm holding this magazine up for nobody to see.
June 2, 1972 copy of Life magazine.
So hold it where
in front of you. You have to do that thing when you're doing it in the
let's
mirror.
do this.
If I hold it here long enough. No, wait.
There we go.
Do.
It's like shaving in a mirror.
There you go.
There she is.
There she is.
Wearing her number 11 Portland Bombers. Raquel on skates. Yeah, it was the title of the article inside is "The Hottest Thing on Wheels," which was also the slogan for this. So, and I was saying beforehand, that's pretty crazy to be on the cover of Life magazine.
Right. So, and then you open it up and there's a little photo expose on the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Not much text.
Right.
But the first thing it talks about is how this is supposed to be Raquel Welch's big, serious acting breakout role, and it's not going to happen with this role. Better luck next time.
We wish you the best, Raquel.
But I think in 1972 for MGM, this was their third highest grossing movie.
Oh, wow. I think it did make money, right?
It did, yeah.
Third highest grossing. Wow. What do you remember? Did you see what else?
One of them was Shaft.
Wasn't this by the same director?
No. No, it's not. I looked up the director, Gerald something.
Gerald, yeah.
He didn't do anything else of note, really.
What is this movie called? Okay.
I can't remember. KC Bomber.
KC Bomber.
Oklahoma City Bomber.
Oh, too soon.
Okay, so there is a quote. If you read the Wikipedia page about Kansas City Bomber, they did a lot of publicity, and Raquel Welch did a lot of interviews promoting this movie. And here is a fantastic quote kind of describing some of the extras we talked about. Raquel Welch said that most of the spectators are basic people, and there's something cathartic about watching people get dumped.
Oh.
Does she mean dumped like...
I think she means like on the track.
On the track,
yeah.
so that...
like the people that enjoy watching that are basic people.
Oh.
You know how the morons like to watch people fall over? Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
And then I also read that this movie started out as a much different movie. The person who wrote the script, it was going to be the story of Raquel wanting to be a Hollywood actress and not being able to make it. So somebody who already is a roller derby queen on her way out takes Raquel under her wing and trains her to be the next roller derby star, and she eventually finds stardom, but as like the villain, and people boo and hiss at her. So she found stardom, but in a way she didn't want.
Right,
and that was going to be the movie, a much deeper character study.
And it sounds a lot more interesting.
Yeah,
I'd like to see that movie.
I know, and that's not exactly what we got.
Yeah, so the reason I thought Shaft sounded familiar is because I must have read that same thing, third most successful after Shaft, and something called Skyjacked. Which, I don't know what that is.
No, not filmed in Portland.
Not filmed in Portland, sadly.
We'll never watch it.
You guys learn anything else about this movie?
I learned that there was a special credit in the very beginnings that it was like score by and music by, and it was featuring the song "Your Way Ain't My Way, Baby" by Jeff Thomas, which is not even on YouTube. I couldn't find it anywhere. Nor did I really see in the movie where that song was used. So,
but holy crap, I found out an interesting story. This movie indirectly led to the death of a folk singer.
What?
Wow.
Go on.
Are you?
I want to see that movie.
Are you guys familiar with Phil Oakes?
I don't think so.
Phil Oakes was a folk singer, contemporary of Bob Dylan's, and he would probably be of note more than he is today if it were not for Bob Dylan. It's a tragic story, the story of Phil Oakes' life, and he was always overshadowed by Bob Dylan and didn't really get the respect, and he tried really hard and wanted to do good, and he never found his fame, and he stuck by his guns and wanted to be, I'm not a sellout, it's all about the message behind the music. And his one commercial venture, he was approached to do the theme song for Kansas City Bomber, so he wrote a song called Kansas City Bomber, and it's actually a jaunty little folk tune, and it sounds kind of great, but guess what? It was rejected from the movie, and this is just one more of those instances in Phil Oakes' life where he just couldn't catch a break. So he was so happy with the song, he wanted to release it as a single, and he did. And then he wanted to sing it at the televised match in Los Angeles of a real roller derby, and they didn't even let that happen. And then a few years later, he went on and killed himself.
That sounds a lot like the character arc of Hank, who is a character in this movie that we have not talked about. How would you describe the character of Hank?
Hank,
He's a simple folk.
You feel pity for Hank.
You feel pity for Hank. Hank is a fellow roller derbyer. He is on Raquel's team. He's on the Portland team. Totally. And he's like a big, oafish, lumbering, big guy who is clearly meant to be aging out of the roller derby and knows that he's in his twilight years of it. And as I think in the movie, the owner, the bad guy, convinces him to put, and this is why we had the questions of like, is this real or is this scripted? Because Hank is encouraged to act crazy and be out of control because the crowd loves it and it'll get us, people in the seats. And so he does that, but wrong
to an extreme,
I guess.
Yeah.
I think he
goes too far.
Did Hank go too far?
At heart, he always kind of had a problem portraying the image of being like the pig and the villain, and it didn't sit well with him. But it's what people like, so he did it. And
it sounds like his dad used to call him Piggy or something like that. Was that the story?
I don't know. It sounds believable.
So anyway,
Todd wrote the backstory for Hank.
So yeah, and so Hank eventually, for some reason, gets in trouble for that and gets fired. And this is the second person from the team that gets fired, and they're all blaming Raquel Welch because Raquel Welch is now dating the owner bad guy, and the rest of the women on the team are blaming her for everyone leaving and everything changing, which I kind of deserves. Like she kind of deserves it. I thought she didn't. She was not very likable. In this
guilty.
movie.
No,
nobody was very. That's another thing I wrote down. Is there anyone that we're rooting for in this movie besides maybe Hank
or the kids?
To get a better mom.
Right.
We're rooting for them to have a better life with someone else.
The poor grandmother.
But yeah, I mean, everybody, the Jackie Scarecrow character, just doing the worst impression of whatever happened to Baby Jane. Like always just stares. There's the Kenton club shots where she's like drunk and like staring off into the distance and being very dramatic and throwing drinks, and everyone in this except for Pigtails. Maybe Pigtails is likable because she lets Casey live with her on the houseboat.
What about Hank?
Hank, yeah. So Hank gets fired and then has a mental breakdown and starts.
We have pity for
acting
him.
like a pig.
Acting like a pig. So he's.
You want color machinery?
He goes crazy and starts going around the track, and I played the little clip at the beginning how And then they tackle him, which must be very difficult to tackle someone on skates, these poor security guards. But he starts screaming, "I'm not a pig,"
I
and
never want to be no different. There's no pig. I ain't no pig.
If they ever remake this film, I want to see Tommy Wiseau in the role of Hank.
Yes.
he would be perfect. So yeah, Hank gets fired, and that's kind of the last we hear from him, right? Like, do we get any sort of denouement with, like, he found a wife and now is a happy mechanic or whatever? Like, we never hear from him again.
He's gone.
He's just gone.
They had the little text at the end of the movie, and Hank committed suicide.
Oh.
But yeah, the only person that we care about in this whole, and he has a crush on Casey too, of course, because she's Raquel Welch, and he keeps trying to like ask her out, like as a nice guy type thing, and she always just
Would
turns
you
him
go to the
down.
movies with me?
Yeah,
We'll see, Hank.
he's totally Bubba Gump from, I guess not Gump, Bubba from Forrest Gump. I have a real question.
Okay.
Why is this movie called Kansas City Bomber?
It's a terrible, terrible name.
Kansas City Bomber was not the team name when she was on the Kansas City team. It is not her nickname.
No.
It is not ever spoken in this movie
It's
or
not anyone's
used
nickname.
or anyone's nickname.
Yeah.
But this movie is called, and she carries around a bag, I think, that has
KC.
maybe just case.
It says
KCB
KCB
on it.
Demolition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Demolition.
City Bomber.
like a bomb. But
So-
I mean, it's never ever mentioned or brought up or anything, and it's the name of this movie that takes place in Portland
Yeah.
about roller derby.
And the fact that she's from Kansas City is pretty irrelevant to anything else
Yeah.
in the film.
Yeah.
It's not her other than her name.
If anything, it
but
should
she
be
never talks about, I wish I can go back, or anything about Kansas City.
If anything, it should be the Portland Bomber.
Yeah, is Bomber one of the what did they have? They
The
had
positions.
one of the positions.
The jammer.
Jammer.
The
Jammer.
jammer.
Ja-
Bomber. But yeah, I got to the end of this movie and I was like, wait a minute, what is this movie called? Why is this? It didn't make any sense.
This is probably why this movie is relatively unknown in the lexicon of Portland films.
Of Portland films,
People
and
write
especially
it
for a
off.
city which, like, I feel like this movie or this city still has, I think, a fairly vibrant roller derby scene.
Yes,
Right.
You would
And
you would
it's-
think that this movie would be more of a cultural
Yeah.
cult classic in this city, but you never hear of it.
Yeah. That's Kansas City Bomber.
Can you bring up a little YouTube the song "Kansas City Bomber" by Phil Oakes?
Oh yeah.
I think this is appropriate right now.
How do you spell Oaks?
O
Well, I guess I
C H
just-
S.
Oh, I think I have. I think I've read that name. Let's see. There it is. I'm gonna get flagged for this probably. But...
She comes from Kansas City in the middle of the land. She was the queen of the game, but love never came with a man, Now all they know is her name. She's the Kansas City Bomber. Let her roll, let her fly to the
This would have been a
That's-
great song in the movie.
I love that.
I know.
But instead, I don't know how. I think I wrote down one of the music cues here, because the music.
I
in
don't,
this
I don't
is
understand why that was
just-
rejected. It would have
Right.
fit right in.
Well, because they were too busy
Being gritty.
being gritty. Yes. So this is like a basic all throughout the movie, like all of the establishing shots, there's a lot of long walks from a distance. I feel like, and it's all
The driving montage.
the driving montage was like this. It's all that
Come
like
on, let her
gross-
roll. Let her roll.
That gross 70s, like, oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll see if I can find the driving montage, the driving to nowhere montage. Oh, here we go. Yeah, she's clearly driving through the gorge here.
Because if the gorge deserves a soundtrack, that's it.
Oh.
Oh, look, kids, it's Multnomah Falls.
Yeah, it's just. It's just also gross feeling to
It's
me.
like driving Miss Daisy through the gorge.
Yeah, it's bad. You know what the other 45 minutes of this movie was? People having one-sided telephone conversations. Every time someone, Raquel Welch does it like 5 times. Pigtails does it one time. The owner does it one time. They'll walk into a room one time. Raquel Welch is in someone's office and says, "Oh, I can't talk long. I'm in someone's office." A conversation that takes 5 minutes, and we only see Raquel Welch saying like, "Uh huh, uh huh."
Well, it's because you only have to pay for one actor if someone's on the phone.
And then the bad guy comes. The owner comes in, and he is from out of town. So it's not his office because he says, "Oh, I'm here from out of town, and I'd like to talk to you more about your contract." Whose office are they in? They're just in
an office, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry about the charges. I'll pay for
yeah,
them."
your long distance charges. Yeah, and then in one of the Kenton Club scenes, when we were standing in there tonight, I'm like, "Oh, this is where they had the table set up, and over there," and I started laughing because I'm like, "Over there is where she had the 12-minute extended phone conversation in the corner talking to no one." Oh. That made me laugh so hard. That and how Bert, the bad guy, when they were doing that long walk and talk through the hotel, he was dragging her along with him. He had grabbed her not like by the hand, like by the upper arm, and was like walking with her as if she was like a hostage the whole time. I thought it was very unsettling.
And that was in the Thunderbird Hotel.
Yes, now
Thunderbird Inn, which no longer exists.
Because it burned down. What was that? A couple of years ago.
A few years ago, 2012 maybe.
Yeah, and then when they go up the elevator there, and there's a Arco sign right outside of the elevator, and that's that same Arco that's still there in that little Jansen Beach area.
Everybody should know that Arco has not changed their logo in 40 years.
I was
now.
really surprised it had been around that long.
Yeah,
I didn't really realize that. That's funny.
So I think we've hit the highlights on the locations that we wind up in Portland in this movie.
I did. Do you want to talk about some of the locations? Well, before I get into that, I have 2 more things. All of the action scenes, which were all of the roller derby scenes, were they filmed well or not? I couldn't decide.
What I thought was jarring was how they had to track the as they went around the track, they would track them for a little bit, and then the camera would have to quickly go around the track to catch up with them again.
Yeah.
They didn't have enough camera angles, I don't think.
Yeah, they really had 2 angles going on. They had from one of the ends of the
oval
and then one from inside the oval.
With them skating in front, like following them or in front of them. Yeah. Because the first time I watched it, I was like, everything about it just didn't seem right to me. But on the second viewing, I was like, well, maybe these aren't filmed that badly, and it's something else that's the problem. Because they weren't as bad the second time around. But this stunt woman just was cracking me up every time. And there's a scene at the very end. So at the very end, Raquel Welch's character has to challenge the Jackie, who was the star player of the Portland Loggers before KC arrived, and of course they have to say the line. Do they even say Portland isn't big enough for the both of us? I forget, but they also say
feel like they did
have to leave Portland forever, which is a very long time.
Ever.
And so they're doing their final battle. They have to do like 5 laps, and whoever wins, and it's no holds barred. You can do anything you want. And so they're skating and skating and skating. They're about to finish the race, and there's one final confrontation that Jackie is trying to get past, and Raquel throws an elbow, knocking Jackie back, and it's in slow motion, and Raquel is reaching for the ribbon, and they replay that same scene 4 times in slow motion.
Yeah.
And it's not the same shot.
It's not.
It is 4 different shots of Jackie being knocked over, Raquel flipping her hair out of the way so everyone can see her grab and it was the craziest thing that it was different shots.
So I don't think they had enough cameras. I think that was it. Because I think there were a lot of continuity issues like that I think they had 2 cameras to work with.
Right.
And in that case, you didn't have enough cameras to film four
Right.
four points of view of the same thing,
Right.
and
4 angles.
so they're like, all right, do it again,
And it was crazy because it was done like we were watching the knockout in a Rocky movie. Like we were like this was
the culmination. This was the money shot.
It was
for the
so
movie.
lovingly done and so not. And then she wins. Casey wins and skates around. You can hear Pug in the background, very excited. Very excited for Casey's win. And then skates around holding the ribbon up, and then we get a beautiful freeze frame of Raquel holding up the tape for her victory lap.
You have to figure out what happened at the end yourself.
Yeah, so what happened? Like, she gets to stay.
So she was supposed to lose that final match.
Right.
And then
move to Chicago?
Right, so if she lost, the storyline was that she would have to leave Portland forever, and that the owner of the team would take her with him to Chicago, where he was about to launch a brand new team that had some sort of television contract
and
deal.
there, theoretically, she would get to
be a
live with her
star.
children.
With her children and with owner and
So then-
happily ever after. So why...
But she didn't trust him.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately,
It wasn't explicit.
True.
I mean,
True.
he was a grosso.
Right.
He was a disgusting person
Yes.
but their kissing scenes were so gross.
uncomfortable.
Two gaping open fish mouths colliding in midair. Just disgusting.
Do you think
Do
you think it was direction? Oh, Raquel, make sure you open your mouth in this scene.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was to be able to prevent him from, I don't know.
There's even like gross mouth noises.
Oh, it was so upsetting. It was just terrible. But yeah, that seems weird at the very end that she gambles on throwing away, because her situation wouldn't be any different in Chicago than it is in Portland. So like at the very worst, she would be in the same situation. At the very best, she would have her children with her. But she decides to gamble any chance of being with her children and win the thing at the end to stay in Portland. Or maybe she thinks she'll establish herself as the star and be able to move her kids out.
So that's the message of this movie: is people love Portland so much they're willing to throw away the good stuff in life to stay in Portland.
That's right.
Who cares about your kids?
Portland
Life
is more important
Portland
than your kids.
Is great.
Living in Kenton is better than living with your kids. I think that was on the sign when we drove in.
Where family doesn't matter.
Well, let's talk about some of the other locations here.
Yep. We mentioned the Kenton Club.
Yeah.
Where we went and checked it out tonight, and it was very cool. That it feels exactly the same in the Kenton Club today. It looks the same on the inside and the outside as it did in the movie, except for the fact that now there are Kansas City Bomber posters on the wall, which I was very happy to see. That place, it is amazing that place still exists. So I encourage everyone to watch this movie and then go check it out.
Yeah. And then I think that place, the Kenton Club, has been open since like the 40s, I think. It's been there a long time.
Yeah.
Long time.
Cool place.
And the Expo Center is where they did a lot of the skating and then a lot of the roller derby shots.
I assume.
Yeah. And then we had...
there were some external shots at the Expo Center.
Yeah, that's where that parking lot scene happened with the two guys in the parking lot.
The attempted kidnap and rape.
Yeah, that we never heard or talked about again. But then somebody on the Facebook page wrote in a little bit earlier. She remembers outside of Medford, there was a place called Roller-Rama that they did some. They must have done some pickup shots. And stuff like that.
I read that they filmed some roller derby shots in Fresno and Kansas City and Portland.
Why would you go all the way to Kansas City? Like
Authenticity.
to do an indoor roller derby shoot?
Because the people watching the movie would be like,
"This
isn't Kansas City."
That's where all the good extras were Kansas City. But yeah, the houseboats and Jansen Beach. I forget what that little area is called.
Hayden Island.
Hayden Island. Okay, yeah. So one of the roller derby girls, the pigtail girl, invites Raquel's character to live with her, and they live in a houseboat down in that area. The hotel that used to easy. The hotel that was there was that what was the name of that hotel at the Jansen Beach?
The Thunderbird Inn.
Thunderbird Inn. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other places that you noticed?
Thunderbird Inn, when it burnt down in 2012, was the #1 Multnomah County delinquent property tax property.
Wow.
Yeah, they owed $700,000 in back taxes.
And mysteriously burned to the
Burned out.
ground.
Hmm.
Huh. Interesting.
You know what I did not see in this movie? Location-wise,
Oaks Park.
Oaks Park.
Oaks
Oaks
Park. And with a roller rink movie.
I know. Like that. How
Wow.
could that not be?
I
Like-
guess. Well, I guess they need a roller derby track,
Yeah,
so they'd have
roller
to build
derby
one
track.
over it. But that is
But they
pretty
could
funny.
even have like a fun scene where they just want to go skating.
They
for
go
fun.
skating. I feel like they were kind of lampooned, or not lampooned. They were stuck up in North Portland, and I think they didn't really get much further south than that.
You know what it could be? I bet we went to Oaks Park not long ago for Mark's birthday party.
Right.
Mhm.
And it seemed that it was a little awkward how family friendly they were pushing the image there. Like I think they had signs about the rules there,
Okay.
and I'm wondering if they just didn't want to, like the roller derby is like the
The
scary
dirty
people.
side.
Yeah, we
Right.
don't want to associate
Roller
with that.
skating.
It
in
was
Oaks
too
Park.
real, too
Yeah.
gritty.
Too gritty. 270s.
I'm wondering if they turned him down.
Has the roller derby gone too far? Other than that, yeah, I don't think there was a whole lot of other. This whole movie just felt like it took place on the same set the
yeah.
whole time.
It
and then,
wasn't-
like in a locker room.
It wasn't a
Yep.
Portland love fest like
No.
The Hunted or.
No, but I mean, they did name it by.
It's
by-
definitely Portland.
Yeah, which is interesting.
With Kansas City in the title.
Kansas, yeah, with Kansas City in the title and Bomber also in the title inexplicably. Well, would you recommend watching anything from this movie?
Mark's Extras video.
Mark's
Yeah,
Extras, yeah,
as
you
a-
can search YouTube. What should we search YouTube? What are you going to put that up as?
I don't know.
We'll figure it out. Go to
Put a
Portland
link
at
up.
the movies. We'll figure it out.
PortlandoftheMovies.com.
But I'm assuming, yeah, there's.
If you're in a certain kind of mood, I would totally recommend this movie.
I think what we say, I'm going to extrapolate what I said because we were watching that clip that Mark had made over and over about the crowd reaction, and I said that it would make a perfect like art installation on the wall of like a super hip club where you're just playing it without audio, you're just playing this slow motion or fast or whatever, and it kind of feels like if you're at a party and you want something crazy on in the background. I think that would make a pretty interesting watch because you don't need the sound. You can't follow anything anyway, and there's not really
No.
a story that you're following
Yeah.
anyway.
And so the slow mo version is 5 minutes long, and it's
And you
Yeah.
can,
kind of fun
you
to
can
watch.
read the lips of the crowd.
Yes, and the Italian sign language you can read as well. But yeah, maybe there's a clip with her you could on YouTube that you can watch Raquel do some skating
It's an interesting.
because she looks good.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie in like the history of movies in Portland. It was the first major Hollywood film filmed in Portland.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's cool.
Yeah,
That's definitely a marker then. Nice.
and it shows an interesting time capsule view of Portland.
Yeah,
in-
it was a
in
very real.
1972.
I mean, I guess the whole thing about it was supposedly gritty or whatever, but yeah, it was. It was not a very shellacked or veneered look at things.
It was not the best movie we've watched on this show yet, but it was by far not the worst.
It was, yeah, it was not
Yep.
the worst. Well, awesome. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us for another episode of Portland at the Movies. You can hear us on the Fun Employment Radio Network, and you can also find us at Portland at the Movies Fun Employment Radio Network. Also, a Willamette Week Best of Portland, the Fun Employment Radio Show with Greg and Sarah, won for the second year in a row, as well as the best podcast in Portland.
Congratulations.
So we're happy to be with them on their network, and congratulations to them. Brian, if people wanted to find out more about you, what can they do?
Check me out at unipiper.com and Facebook and all those fun social media things that I know you all do.
You need a big "as seen on TV" sticker.
As
And
seen
just
on-
walk around. You get a T-shirt with that. That would be pretty funny, actually.
Or I could just get a TV and walk around and
Oh, yeah.
turn it on. Chances are you'll see the Unipiper.
That's right. And you can hear Mark and me every week. Every other week, or I guess
every
not
week
every
that
week.
we're not
that
doing
we're not
this.
We do this once a month. The other 3 weeks of the month, we do the Mark and Toddcast. What is that about, Mark?
It's about Portland and some science topic each week. And so we talk about science news and things going on in Portland. And the Unipiper comes on and talks about current events in Portland. And yeah.
He does, yes. So you can find that at markandtoddcast.com. There are 92 past episodes for you to catch up with. Other than that, I don't think I have. I was gonna. Oh, I can.
Whatever you play us out on, I'm just going to play the slow-mo crowd. And so
Okay.
now
I'll play a little bit more.
viewing the slow-mo crowd.
I'll play a little bit more of the Phil Oakes Kansas City Bomber song because that was just so delightful. Thank you again for joining us. You can find out more at portlandatthemovies.com and at facebook.com/portlandatthemovies. This is our 8th or 9th episode, I forget which, but we've done a bunch of movies and we have got a lot more coming up, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for joining us. We will see you guys next time.
Wow.